Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nowadays we are talking about quantitative data analysis, and we have also discussed about various things that help us understanding our data and how do we do analysis. For example, in our previous lectures we have discussed that if you want to intend to do quantitative analysis, one has to consider the type of the data, that is the scale of measurement, which is very important, which we have to consider before doing anything with the data. And we have discussed that our data can be categorical or numerical, and within these categories we have discussed what kind of data sets we can have. Format is also important, in which your data will be input to the analysis software. For example, SPSS, eViews, Stata, Microfit, whatever kind of software you are going to use. And Vivo is one of the software that normally analyzes the open-ended questions for qualitative analysis. Impact of data coding on subsequent analysis for different data types. Today we are also talking about data coding and all. Methods you intend to use to check data for errors, and what kind of methods you are going to use to check for errors. Quantitative data we have seen can be divided into categorical and numerical, and categorical data refers to data whose values can't be measured numerically, and we have discussed that it can be male, female, it can be cars characteristics like hatchback, saloon and estate, and number of other things that cannot be measured with values or numerical values, or either can be classified into sets like categories according to the characteristics that identify or describe the variable, or placed in rank order. We can order them, and that's how we can be in a position to see what kind of data sets we have, what kind of analysis we can conduct, how to deal with that data. Numerical data, which are sometimes also called quantifiable or quantified. So these data has values that are measured or counted numerically as quantities, and we have seen examples of that. For example, income and consumption. Distance is also that we can measure in numbers, and this means that numerical data are more precise than categorical. Precise not in the sense that there are difficulties in measuring categorical data, but their preciseness means that we are in a better position to analyze, to graph, to tabulate, to describe numerical data relative to what we have in our categorical data sets. So this is one of the important aspect of numerical, categorical, quantifiable data relative to what we get in categorical data. It also means that you can analyze these data using for a wider range of statistics. We can also analyze that data by using various means and ways of conducting analysis. Like we have seen that we can make single variable graph, we can combine one or two variables, we can also combine two variables with different units, and we have also seen that we can also do comparative analysis, where we have seen that we have remittances from West Asia, we have total remittances, and we have remittances from USA, and we can plot them together to understand what are we looking at, what is our aim, why we are doing that kind of analysis. There are two possible ways of subdividing numerical data. Numerical data can be divided into these sub parts, for example, interval or ratio data, and alternatively into continuous or discrete data. And we have seen simply that by using a simple graph that we have developed, like this is our numerical data, which we can divide into interval and we have seen the examples of interval data, or we have a option to make it a ratio data, or we can make it either continuous, or we can make it discrete. So this is how we can describe our numerical data simply into these categories. And we have also seen that we can describe our categorical data into dichotomous, where one can give two different values to same variable. Like gender can be male or female, and then you can code them male differently, female differently. Then we have rank, order, or ordinal variable. So these are the three categories under which we place categorical variables. Then we have also discussed in our last two lectures that what to do when we are making, or when we are plotting, or when we are tabulating our data which is quantitative. We have to take care of these 5 important points, and we have discussed these 5 points one by one in our previous lectures in detail. I just want to make sure that you take them seriously, you make your mind clear about these points, so that when we start writing results and discussion session of our dissertation, report, or research paper, then we'll be in a better position to understand what kind of data sets we have, what kind of analysis we are doing, what kind of graphs or tables we can make, how to support these graphs and tables with our data, so that it can make some sense for those who want to read our research paper, report, or dissertation. So for both diagrams, graphs, figures, and tables, we have to have a brief, clear, and descriptive title. Title is one of the very important things. So one thing that we have to have in mind is brief, clear, and descriptive title. This is very important thing. We have seen in our previous examples with various graphs that when we draw a graph, we are in a position to explain it nicely, but when a reader reads it or saw it or look at it, he or she is unable to understand what kind of data is included, why this graph is drawn, why this figure is here, why this table is made, so that the title gives the reader or gives the researcher an understanding of the aim of drawing that particular table or diagram. So it must contain a brief, clear, and descriptive title. Secondly, it must have units of measurement which should be stated clearly. So the second thing that one has to keep in mind is units of measurement, and they must be clearly stated. We have seen also in our previous example that on one side we had written log, for example on y-axis we have written log, on x-axis we have written nothing, but we were showing some numbers on both x and y-axis. So it's difficult for a reader to understand what does that log means, how do they link various variables that are plotted in that particular graph, or we have written units in $1 million. So he or she don't know whether it is GDP, is GDP per capita, is it remittances, it is income, consumption, what is it? So we have seen with the example that we have to write a precise unit of measurement that makes sense for us. So we have to write remittances in US $1 million, so that it makes us understand what is on the y-axis. And then we have also seen on x-axis that we have to write with whether it is years or time, so that one can understand that starting from 1972 to let's say 2011 or 12. Unit of measurement must be clearly stated. Are the sources of data used stated clearly? Sources of data are another important point. Sources of data. We have seen in our example of graph and table that we have got some data. For example, remittances for Pakistan from West Asia, total remittances for Pakistan, and remittances for Pakistan from USA. And that is for the year 1972 to 2011. So whether we get this from which source, whether it was from Economic Survey, it is from State Bank of Pakistan, it is from other sources, World Development Indicator has this data, what sources we use to get that data. Unless we point out the sources of where we get data, it is unclear for reader that how this researcher has plotted these variables, from where these figures are coming from. So this is very important to have a source of data at the end of the diagrams or table below the diagram, so that one can understand that from this source the data is taken, so it can be easily verified. Reliability increased when you provide a source. Suppose you are making a table or graph which you have conceived by yourself, and we have taken the example of Pakistan's health system, which was author's own conception. So in source you have written that it's author's own conception based on the literature that he read, which describes Pakistan's health system. It was not in tabular or figure form or diagrammatic form, but what the readers read about Pakistan's health system, he or she come up with a nice diagrammatic representation of what was written about Pakistan's health system, how it was divided into various tiers, and how each tier is described separately. So we have seen that it is divided into 3 tiers, that is primary, secondary and tertiary. What is included in primary, what is included in secondary, what is included in tertiary, and then it contains a title, units of measurement, source, and explanation of all the relevant terms. So are there notes to explain abbreviations and unusual terms? So we have to also understand that if there is explanation of unexplained or abbreviated terms. So we have seen that remittances we have used, West Asia we have used, which might not be clear to everybody. So we have to explain in the end what is remittances, what is West Asia included, and all that. And in one of our example in table we have shown various variables that were described in simple abbreviations like IMR, PCI, PHE, unemployed, calories and all that. In the beginning we have put on a star, and then in the end below the sources we have explained what does that star means. And that star was showing that every single abbreviation has this or that particular meaning. Then IMR was stated as infant mortality rate, TFR was stated as total fertility rate, and so on. So we have to explain all unexplained and abbreviated terms nicely. Does it state the size of sample on which the values on the tables are based? It is also good for you as a researcher to explain the sample size. Explain the sample size means that you basically include in your table that how much your sample size was, like say 100, 200, 300. Out of these total, how much belongs to this or that category, how much belongs to this or that income group or something like that. So these 5 points were very important point when we discussed about diagrams for tables and and figures and graphs. Now we will be talking about how do we prepare our data for description. Data preparation and description. Today we are talking about data preparation and description. Data preparation include editing of data, coding of data, and data entry. How we edit, how we code, and how we enter data into particular software or in particular format so that we can make a simple, nice, easy to understand analysis of that data. And it's also the activity that ensures the accuracy of the data and their conversion from raw form to reduced and classified forms that are more appropriate for analysis. Okay, so now we understand why do we do data preparation. What it does, it ensures accuracy, that is number one. Converts from raw to reduced form data, number two. So reduced form and classified data, classified form, which are more appropriate for analysis. So what data preparation activity actually does is that it ensures accuracy of the data that we are going to use for our analysis to answer our research question or objective that we have set in the beginning of our analysis. And then it actually converts from raw form to reduced and classified forms that are more appropriate for analysis. For example, for some categorical data, you get an answer called don't know. Or, for example, there was a choice which says others. So either how you analyze this don't know or other response. What if somebody don't know the date of birth? So what kind of number you will use there? 99, 00, 100. So these are simple ways of coding data so that you can understand your data. You can reduce it in a form that makes sense for you, for your software that you are using to analyze, and for coding purpose so that whenever it comes out something, when you do some simple or advanced analysis, then you will be in a better position to understand your data. It also helps to prepare a descriptive statistic summary, and it also a preliminary steps that allow data entry errors to be identified and corrected. So it helps in ensuring accuracy of the data, converts raw data from reduced to classified forms, that is helpful for appropriate analysis, helps in preparing for summary statistics, and summary statistics actually tells us that is there any data errors available in our data or not. For example, how do we assess whether the data is having an error or not? So what we get in our simple summary statistics is variables, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just giving you example, I'm not putting any name of the variables here, but just to make you understand. So here is A, B, C, rather than here is minimum, maximum, and average. So once minimum is, let's say, 0.5, maximum is 3.5, and average is 1.2. I'm just giving you an example. 2 is some variable whose minimum is 100, maximum is 700, and average is 550. 3 is, let's say, 3.5 minimum, 10.5  6.5 average. Fourth is 3.8 minimum, and then you get maximum of, let's say, 29.5. So average might be between, let's say, 17.5. So maximum is giving you an idea that it must not be that much high. So there might be some difficulty in your data when you enter the data. There might be a misspecification of point, so that you are getting very high value for maximum, which might not be the case. So then you actually go in your Excel sheet for that particular variable, which we have named 4, and then in that variables list you see whole numerical data or categorical data, whatever coding you have used, to check whether you have some problem with your data or not. So this is how, from descriptive statistics, we'll be in a position to see whether our mean, minimum, maximum gives us an idea of is there any outlier, or is there any misspecification, or if there is a wrong entry of a numerical or categorical data that actually disrupts our whole analysis. If this is the case, you are in a better position to see which variable has some problem and which value you have to see it again. So data preparation and description helps us increasing and ensuring accuracy from raw form to reduced form. That is helpful for better analysis. It helps to prepare for descriptive statistics. That's also a preliminary step to ensure that the data is error free. It is a customary first step in analysis to edit the raw data. Data editing. When you know that there is a problem with your data, you do data editing. For example, you have fixed some codes that are relatively getting confused in your mind. So you might recode your data for which you are getting confused. That's also an editing. So editing detects errors and omissions, corrects them when possible, and certifies the maximum data quality standards are achieved. So what editing helps? It helps in detecting errors, corrects the error, and certifies the data quality or the maximum data quality and standard that one has to or one want to achieve. And what is the purpose of data editing? Is to guarantee that data are accurate, consistent with the intent of the question that we asked and other information in the survey, and uniformly entered, complete, and arranged to simplify coding and tabulation. So data editing actually help us in these few things: increasing accuracy, maximum understanding of your data, and you are basically in a position to enter your data for analysis in a way that help increase your ease for analyzing the data. So it arranged to simplify coding and tabulation. When coding simplifies your data entry, then it also helps how you make table when you do tabulation of your data which is entered in, let's say, Excel format or any other format in SPSS or whatever. So one thing that you have to keep in mind, it's always good if you know any other good software, you have to enter data in there, but normally what you can do is you have to enter your data in Excel, because Excel help you to do simple analysis first within Excel, and if you want to do any further advanced analysis, you can actually import it to that particular software format. For example, it's easy from Excel to shift into SPSS, eViews, Stata, Microfit, PCGIV, or any other software that you are going to use. So these are the things that you have to understand, and Excel is also very important. You can actually save your original data in Excel, and you'll be in a better position to do data editing, coding, and changing, increasing accuracy and all that. Excel also gives you a simple way of graphing, simple way of tabulating, so that you can see is there any discrepancy in your data. So that can be simplified, that can be minimized, that can be erased to increase your data accuracy, reliability, ensuring maximum out of what you want to analyze from your data. So what are the various steps, what are the various things that we actually do in our data editing? So one thing is, or what actually data editing gives us, what are the criteria? So number one, we actually get accurate data when we do data editing. So this is accuracy. Then data must be consistent when we do editing. Arrange for simplification so that we understand our data and then do analysis according to what we do. And then data must be uniformly entered, and it gives us a sense that the data is complete and we can do it, whatever analysis we are intending to do based on our research question and objectives. Data editing is basically based on these 5 simple criteria, and we have seen in our previous slide that these are accuracy, that data editing helps us to increase; consistency, that when we check for errors and omissions, when we try to simplify our data, it definitely increases its consistency. We arrange data, edit it to increase its simplification so that we can understand the data that we have collected. It also helps us to enter data and to understand it uniformly, and it helps to complete data entry and complete a data from errors, so that error-free data, so that we'll be in a better position to analyze it. So field editing. So editing can be when you are entering the data, or editing can be when you are in the field and you're collecting data. It can be reviewed by entry gaps, you can call back, or you can validate by re-interviewing. So if there are some problems with your data sets, what you can do is you ask your research assistant to call back what he or she get when he or she was asking that particular question. If that is not satisfying, what you can do, or if you think that the answer is okay but you want to satisfy yourself, then for validating purpose, you can go and interview the same person again for that particular question or questions you have in your mind. And this is how you can actually validate or do field editing while you are reviewing what kind of data your research assistants are collecting. So the simple example is that you have had a research question and objective in your mind. Based on that, you formulated a questionnaire, and that questionnaire is actually filled by people in rural areas of Pakistan, and you have had some research assistants with you. So one of the research assistants come back with a question answered very differently from the other research assistants' question answers. So what you do, you check in the evening for every questionnaire, or whenever you have time after 2-3 days or on weekends, that whether the questionnaires are filled with honesty or not. And if that is the case, you can actually validate question by question that what kind of responses you're getting. And if there is some discrepancy or there is a huge gap or difference between the same answer for 2 different interviewees, so what you do, you basically call back your research assistants, ask them what they asked, how they asked, and what kind of answer they get. Once you get satisfied, it's okay, but if you think that it still needs validation, what you can do, you go back to that same person and you re-interview them. That's how you do field editing when you are collecting data in your field. Field editing, it is helpful for large projects where data is too much, so that you have to do it in the field so that you don't miss any important aspect, and that must not destroy your whole analysis of the project that you are intending to do. Field editing reviews the responsibility of the field supervisor. If you have field supervisor, it is the responsibility of that particular person to do field editing. It should be done soon after the data have been collected. So same day alternative days, on weekends when few days data are collected. During the stress of data collection, data collectors often use ad hoc abbreviations and special symbols. So for example, it's not necessary that you have got some data that is problematic, but you can also get some ad hoc abbreviations that might not be understandable to you, because they are collecting data every day, they are collecting similar kind of responses every day from their respondents. So how to deal with them, how to understand these ad hoc abbreviations which are not commonly used, or special symbols. So might be they can use a special symbol for something and that is not understandable to you. So that's where you need field editing. It's not necessary that your data is unvalidated, but it might be that they have used abbreviations and special symbols. So for example, they write MGT for management, or they might write MKT for marketing. So how do you understand these things? You have to make sure that field editing is also necessary, especially when the projects are large, when the data set is large. If the forms are not completed soon, the field interviewer may not recall what the respondent said. So you have to do it immediately, time to time, with shorter lapse of time, so that those who are collecting data can actually recall. If you do it after a long time, it might not be possible for a person who is collecting data to recall what has been said or what he meant when he writes something in abbreviated or a special symbol forms. Therefore, reporting forms should be reviewed regularly. You have to review regularly if there is some form of reporting form available for those who are collecting data for your project. Field editing also includes entry gap callback. We have also said that entry gaps can be understood by callback. When entry gaps are present, a callback should be made rather than guessing what the respondent probably said. When the data entry was done, those who are entering the data, ask them why they have put something special here, why that is blanked, why it is 0, why it is 1, if they are in a position to call back or not. And if something is missing and you are fulfilling it by guessing that it might be something like that, then it definitely destroys your whole data set. So when entering the data, fulfilling the gaps, you have to ask your person who has collected the data to call back, so that this should be filled honestly rather than just guessing it. So the second thing is validating. How do you validate that whether he or she is telling you the truth or honestly or not? So the field supervisor also validates field results by re-interviewing some percentage of the respondents on same questions to verify that they have participated. So there are chances that your research assistant must not go to the interviewee. They sit somewhere and they fill up form based on the responses they are getting for, let's say, if they filled up 15-20 forms. This might create biasness in your data, or their data is not reliable and cannot be valid. So what you can do as a field supervisor is you choose certain percentage, you go back to them, you ask question, so that you understand that that data is validated and that data is actually collected from the respondents. And it is normally a rule of thumb that you go to at least 10% of your respondent for doing data validation. When you want to do data validation, you choose 10% sample, again randomly, whatever sampling techniques you want to use, and you go and see and ask the question from the same questionnaire your research assistants have used to get data from your interviewee, and that will help you to validate whether you have done it rightly or not. Central editing. We had field editing, now we are talking about central editing. Scale of study, number of editors. So these are also linked. If the scale of study is too high, let's say national level, then definitely number of editors must be high and they must be needed to validate or edit the data. At this point, the data should get a thorough editing. So you have to give a thorough editing to your data. For a small study, a single editor will produce maximum consistency, but as I've said, if your study size is large, it is a national level study, or even if it is a provincial level study but the data set is large, project is high, and you're collecting very informative questionnaire and data through that questionnaire, then you definitely need more than one editor. For large study, editing tasks should be allocated by sections. So if your questionnaire is large enough, let's say 20-30 pages, and you have various sections, so what you do for each or for at least 1 or 2 sections, you hire one person, and for every other section or 2, you hire another editor, so that you can be getting a data which is thoroughly edited. Wrong entry and replacement. That's also one of the things that you can get while you are entering data. So for central editing, that is important to eliminate these kind of responses. Sometimes it is obvious that an entry is incorrect and the editor may be able to detect the proper answer by reviewing other information in the data set. It might be that there is one particular question for which you are getting responses from your respondents or reviewee or interviewee, and then in the end you end up with something which is not relevant to that. So central editing helps you to delete or avoid these kind of mistakes that you have. And if you are in a position to discard or delete that mistake, your data is error free. And this is the task of central editor. They might use their own thought process to delete that or to detect that. They can also go back to questionnaire where this entry was there, because every questionnaire must be given a unique number. Every section must have a unique number, so that you can understand when you are entering data that from this household these questions were asked and these responded were getting. So if you have problem with, let's say, income data of that particular household, what you do, you get to that particular household's questionnaire, you get the questionnaire and you see that income section has this or that kind of discrepancy when you enter the data. So this is how you ensure internal central consistency and editing in your data sets. This should only be done when the correct answer is obvious. And editors, to ensure consistency, can enter their own opinion or short answer when they are 100% sure that this thing does not belong here, but it must be something else. And as I explained earlier, that what they can do, they basically can go and check the questionnaire for that particular household or person, and they must have a code number for which they can identify that household. And from the questionnaire they can also clarify. While they can enter in obvious cases the number they think is appropriate, but one thing that is appropriate is to ensure through the questionnaire that does it make any sense or not. If an answer given is inappropriate, the editor can replace it with a no answer or unknown. So if you think the answer is inappropriate or inappropriate, and you are also unable to fill that particular space of variable or data in your data set, then you have to leave it with a no answer or unknown. And by looking at the codes, you can also codify unknown or no answer with, let's say, 00 or 111 or 99 or 100 or something like that, whatever is the code for unknown or don't know cases. So these are some of the things that you have to understand while you are doing central editing. So up till now we have talked about data editing, then we talk about field editing. Within field editing we have re-interviewing or callback. And then we have central editing. Within central editing we have wrong entry versus replacement. So wrong entry and replacements is also discussed. Then if it is a wrong entry, we have to appropriately fulfill it or replace it, and if it is a wrong entry, we have to put it, or an editor has to put it, a no answer or unknown answer. Central editing, fakery in open-ended question. The editor can also detect instances of armchair interviewing, fake interviews during this phase. This is the easiest to spot with open-ended question. When your question is open-ended, it's easy to detect whether your research assistant or those who are collecting data actually visited the person or the respondent or not. And it is said, or it is observed, or it is experimented that in open-ended question it's easy to get this fakery rather than in closed-ended question. So in closed-ended question means that whether you say yes or no to certain thing, yes or no cannot give you a better idea of whether it is done in not interviewing, but when it is an open question like what is your opinion about the newly formed government in Pakistan after democratic transition, this is an open-ended question where you have to give your own opinion. There you are in a better position to check this fakery or armchair filling of fake interviews, and this is easiest to spot, especially in open-ended question. So what are the guides to editors? This we have to understand. When you become an editor, to see discrepancy in data for central editing of large data sets, you have to understand these 5 points very carefully. First, be familiar with instructions given to interviewers and codes. So in first thing you have to understand these two things: familiarity with instructions giving to interviewers and coders. So what instruction were given to interviewers and what instruction were given to coder? Do not destroy the original entry. You have to take care of what was originally written. Make all editing entries identifiable in a standardized format. Initial all answers changed or supplied. So you have to initial wherever you have provided an answer or you have changed an answer. Place initial and date of editing on each instrument that is completed. So these are important points that you have to understand. We will see one by one what is that. So don't destroy the original entry. For example, you have seen in the data that there is an entry that does not match with all the data set for that particular variable. You think you have to change, but on what basis you are changing? If you don't know, you are just guessing it, then you are going to destroy the whole data set. Don't do that. As an editor, a central editor, you don't have to add something on guess basis or on guesstimate basis. You have to see whether it makes sense or not first. Secondly, you can also use callback or callback method, or you can go back to the questionnaire where you can see whether it is a typo or what, and then you can get something out of it. So before that you have to understand that what were the instructions that were given to interviewers and those who coded the data, whether they get the instruction rightly or not, whether the data coders coded the data in a way that was appropriate or not. Data coding is also an important aspect of data entry. When you code it nicely, you will be in a better position to understand what each and every code stands for in particular variable, and if you cannot code them nicely, you will be in a better position to get lost when you're analyzing your data. So familiarity with instructions given to interviewers and coders, and don't destroy the original entry. We have already discussed that you have to take care of original entry before you change it for any good or any better. Editing entries identifiable in standardized format. Make all editing entries identifiable and in a standardized format. If you are editing entries within the whole data sets, you have to identify them through using a particular color or a particular font or a particular font size, so that every other person beside the editors who want to see what you have identified as problematic in the data, he or she in a position to see it. If it is the case, then you actually can tell that in that part of data you have identified it nicely, a problem, or you have a standardized format while you do editing of the data. If you don't do that, next time you by yourself will be unable to see where you have done editing, for what kind of variable you have done editing, and in which particular format you have done that editing. So these are some of the important points that you have to keep in your mind when you are editing identifiable entries, and you have to follow an standardized format. All answers changed or supplied should be initial. Whatever changes you made, you have to sign them at that particular place, so that you know that for that particular question, for that particular variable in that identified question, you have changed or made some changes, and you have initial them. Place initials and date of editing on each instrument completed. Wherever you have made changes, you have to put initial and date of editing when you have edited, so that every instrument, every variable, every unit, every numerical data that is changed or completed must be identified, because there are various, or there are more than one editors working for that data, so they can be mixed and matched easily, whether every editor come with the same solution or he or she has proposed something else. And if you want to match with other editors' choices for that particular entry, you can actually think or link these two things together. So these are the 5 important aspects or guidelines that an editor or a central editor of data must have in their mind. One, I am repeating it so that you have to understand it clearly, that familiar with the instruction given to interviewers and coders. Do not destroy the original entry. Make all editing entries identifiable and in a standardized form. Initial all answers changed or supplied, and place initial and date of editing on each instrument completed. You have to follow these steps so that whatever changes you do, they must be identifiable, they are in a standardized format, and one must know that these particular changes are done by that particular editor on this date. So everything becomes clear cut for others to see how the data is entered, edited, and done central editing by various editors, so that you can mix and match the arguments provided by other editors for that particular problem that you have in your data for a particular variable or unit of measurement. Now we are starting with code book. We have seen editing, and we have seen editing at various stages of data collection. Now we'll try to look at code book. What is code book, why it is necessary, and why we have to do coding. So coding involves assigning numbers or other symbols to answers so that the responses can be grouped into a limited number of categories. So this is an important point that you have to understand. It basically assigning number. So in our previous simple example that we have, that car can be hatchback, it can be a state, or it can be saloon. So now when we talk about 1, it always means we are talking about hatchback in cars problem. 2 is always state, and 3 is always saloon. So we give them particular numbers, assign them particular numbers or symbols so that we can understand the responses, and we can group them into limited number of categories. In coding, categories are partitions of a data set of a given variable. So we can partition the variable. So what we can do when we enter the data, for example, we have this Excel sheet for our data. What we can do, we can say car, and here we can say hatchback, saloon, and estate, and here are our respondents. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So he might have, 1 might have hatchback, saloon and estate are free, 2 might have estate, 3 might have this. So this is how you will be in a better position to understand your data sets by entering your data into that particular codified format, so that you can understand categories. So in coding, categories are the partitions of a data set of a given variable. For instance, if the variable is gender, the categories are male and female. Same is the case with male and female data set. So if we make this, we have male, female, here we have gender, and here we have respondent. So 1, 2, 3, and so on. And we know male is equal to 1, female is equal to 2. So these are the codes for example, 1 is 1, 2 is 1, 3 is 1, 4 is 2, 5 is 2. So this is how we respond them. This is how we understand them through coding. Categorization is the process of using rules to partition a body of data. We categorize to partition a data into 2 different categories, male, female. Both closed and open questions must be coded. We have to code open-ended question as well as closed question. Closed questions are relatively easy to code, while open-ended questions are relatively difficult to code. And open-ended questions are normally for qualitative analysis, which we will discuss later in our discussions. But this is a relatively difficult task to code an answer which is open-ended. But there are ways and means, and we will understand in our lecture, in the next lecture, that how we can code the open-ended question also, so that we can get a response that is relatively easy to understand and enter when we are entering the data. Before I end up, I just want to summarize that we are talking about data entry, description, editing, and all. And in today's lecture, we have seen that how to enter the data, what are the important points, how to edit the data, what are the important points, and we have touched a little of coding. Well, in today's lecture we have discussed about in detail editing, how data editing is done, why it is important, what kind of different data editing stages can be used to make data more presentable, more reliable, and more understandable. So we have seen that data editing can be done at field level. Data editing can be done as central editing, and within field you can have callback or re-interviewing, and within central editing you can have one editor if your data set is not that large, but if you have a large data set, you can have editors for each section. Within field editing, we have seen that callback is one way to check problems in your data. You ask the researcher or those who are collecting data to call back what was said, if it makes sense or not. If it does not, and you are getting relatively problem in your data sets, then as a field supervisor, one can go back by choosing 10% of the total sample, which is a rule of thumb. You can have access to, let's say, 5 to 10%, 10 to 12%, whatever is easily convenient for you, to make your data valid and reliable by re-interviewing. If you think here that your research assistants are doing some kind of fakery with you, and they are doing armchair data collection, then definitely you can go into the field, select your sample randomly, and you can re-interview them to make things clear for you. But while you are doing central data editing, you have to keep in mind the 5 important points that we have discussed, that you have to understand the instructions given to data coders and those who are collecting the data. Secondly, you have to understand that you have to initial the data where you are making changes, and you have to follow the standardized format. You have to understand that these are the things that you have to enter without guessing it. You have to go back to the questionnaire, you have to go back to the supervisor, you have to go back to the questionnaire to understand what kind of data sets you are interested in. You don't have to guess. That's what a bottom line, that you don't have to guess and enter the data by guessing. Finally, you have to sign where you are entering the data. You have to date it accordingly so that you know where you have made changes, on what date, and you have to see what kind of changes you have made in your data. Before we end up here, we actually have to understand that editing is very important part of our data collection and our data setting before the analysis of data. If we don't do data editing, our data will not be error or omissions free. And if data is having any such kind of error, it will definitely have distorting effect on our analysis or the level of analysis that we want to conduct. And if that is the case, then we will not be in a position to answer the research question we are interested in, or maybe there are biases in the research question that we want to answer, and that might not help us to reach our objectives of research. So step by step, you have to ensure the reliability and validity of your data sets. And if you are in a position to make your data reliable and valid by doing field editing, coding, and central editing, you will be in a better position to understand the data fully, number 1. Number 2, you will be in a position to make your data error free. Number 3, your data is valid and reliable. And number 4, you will be in a better position to analyze your data the way you want to analyze it. And if that is the case, you will be doing your analysis with ease, number 1. Number 2, whatever kind of analysis you want, you can do it with your data, and you can play with your data easily in whatever format you want to do analysis with your data. I stop it here. I thank you for your attention, and Khuda Hafiz.